Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today is Rare Disease Day, and today this is Amy Siasa Clark from Clean Body Living. I just wanted to do something. I'm joined by some really great people who also have been going through a rare disease. The rare disease we all have in common is Myasthenia Gravis, and we'll talk more about that. But a rare disease is one in which not many people have it. In the US, it's less than 200,000 people have a rare disease. In Europe, it's less than 1 in 2,000 people have it, and over 400 million people have a rare disease around the world. The problem is, even though this is way more than the number of people who have cancer, rare diseases don't get the awareness and the funding that some of these other diseases that are more prevalent get. So today we just wanted to bring some awareness about rare diseases in general and myasthenia gravis in particular, and to talk about what it's like living with a rare disease and how community can really help people who are going through a rare disease. So I also wanted to just introduce what myasthenia gravis is if you're not familiar with it. So most rare diseases actually are genetic. Over 70% of rare diseases are genetic, but there's some that are not genetic, such as myasthenia gravis, which is a rare autoimmune disease. And an autoimmune disease in general is one in which the immune system mistakenly attacks the body. And in myasthenia gravis, the immune system mistakenly attacks the junction where the nerves send signals to the muscles, and it's called the acetylcholine receptor, and people have weakness throughout the body. So you can have blurred vision, you can have difficulty chewing and swallowing, difficult weakness in your arms and legs, and in a myasthenic crisis, even weakness in the lungs. So we really want to just talk about it today, and I'm really excited to have my guest here today. I'll just tell you who they are, and then I'll have them really introduce themselves. So we have Courtney Smith, we have Monie G, and we have Floyd Hunter. So Courtney, can you start us off and just tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about how your diagnosis went, whether it took you a long time to get diagnosed, whether you had to go to a number of doctors, because with a rare disease, unfortunately, a lot of people are misdiagnosed, or it takes a really long time to be diagnosed. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, thanks so much for having me on today. My name is Courtney G. Smith, and I am a Reiki master and teacher. And I'm also an award winning film producer. I had the pleasure, like the great opportunity to produce an award winning film about women in autoimmune diseases. And that stemmed from me being diagnosed with the autoimmune disease myasthenia gravis. And actually, this April makes 20 years that I've been living with that diagnosis. And it took about 3 years for me from the time I knew something was wrong with my body to the time I was actually diagnosed to get diagnosed. I was just very fortunate that when my symptoms did kind of get to the point where everything was out of control and I couldn't ignore it anymore, my doctor, my primary care physician, knew immediately to send me to a neurologist. Um, but even with that, I mean, 20 years ago, we're talking about like paper referrals that had to be approved and like
Wow.
going through all of that nonsense. It would take 2 months from the time he referred me to the neurologist for me to be officially diagnosed. So it was it was about three years.
Wow, that definitely is a long time. And thank you for sharing that. Thank you for all the work that you've been doing with bringing awareness about myasthenia gravis. So if we can go on to Moni, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you were diagnosed and how long it took.
Okay. My name is Simone Monie G. I am a creative arts therapist and dancer. I was diagnosed summer 2004. The exact month I don't even remember because all the process was a blur. Um, I feel like my symptoms showed up probably in my senior year of high school, but I wasn't paying enough attention to them.
Mm,
But by the time my freshman year of undergrad started, the symptoms were really obvious, the droopy eyelid, the crossed eye, the double vision that would appear. Um, the time between those symptoms and my diagnosis took maybe about 8 months. I guess I was fortunate in that sense, but still, even that's a long time for a diagnosis to come about. Um, went to the ophthalmologist, no one thought anything was wrong.
mm,
And eventually, between me knowing that something was wrong and refusing the I don't see anything wrong as an answer, made it to an ophthalmologist who said, you know what, I'm going to send you to an optoneurologist. And that optoneurologist, or neuro-ophthalmologist, I should say, started to request the test that eventually led to my diagnosis. Yeah.
got it. Thank you. Yeah, Floyd, can you go ahead and introduce yourself as well and tell us how long it took?
Well, my name is Floyd Hunter. Right now, I guess you can say that I'm retired after owning a janitorial service for 20 years. And when I was diagnosed, it had to be 91, maybe 92. I was 25, maybe 26 years old when they diagnosed me. But I remember having symptoms long before that with the double vision and just kind of blowing it off. And I actually went to the eye doctor and ended up getting glasses that they now think that I never needed in the first place. And after about a year, in fact, I meant to tell you the other day, this was even before I had insurance at my new job, because I went to a local clinic here, where they had no clue what was wrong with me. And I ended up leaving in the middle of the exam because they were so confused and just blown away by the fact that I was sitting there with double vision and they couldn't figure out what was going on, because to them I looked okay. But after about a year, maybe year and a half, they did the, what was it, the Tensilin test?
Tensilin. Yeah.
Tensilin. They hooked me up to that, and everything was back to normal. And as soon as they disconnected me, I couldn't see again. And that's when they said it was myasthenia gravis. But they thought it was tumors. They thought it was a stroke. They thought it was everything except for what it is.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, that's the sad thing about myasthenia gravis being a rare disease, that doctors often do misdiagnose you and think that something's wrong. For me, I was fortunate that one of my cousins, who's a doctor, mentioned when I told her what happened to me, and for me, it was driving on the highway and getting blurred vision for the first time. She said, "This sounds like something I learned about in medical school, myasthenia gravis." And I said, my what? And I'm sure you probably had the same sort of reaction, because this is something you've never heard of. We've heard of multiple sclerosis, we've heard of lupus, but myasthenia gravis is so rare. It's not something that's really known about, that people know about. So this is one of the reasons why Rare Disease Day is so important, to just bring awareness to all of these rare diseases so that people can get diagnosed quickly and get the help that they need. Now, I want to transition to talking about your lowest moment. I did talk about some of the symptoms that people have, and I'll just share briefly about one of my lowest moments. And at the beginning of my journey, I had a lot of blurred vision. It was mainly ocular. It did progress to other parts of my body, but when it was ocular, I remember trying to call my mother. I was in law school at the time, and I kept dialing the wrong number, just because like the 4 and the 7 were just like misaligned. And I called some woman a few times dialing the wrong number, and she was getting upset with me. And that just made me really feel sad and low, that I can't even dial a phone number. So that's one thing that comes to mind. But I just want to go around again and just talk about your lowest moment, and whether you were alone, whether you were with someone, because the thing with with rare diseases, myasthenia gravis, community is key. And, a lot of times we are alone, and at the beginning of our journeys, at least, it's hard to connect with others who have it. So starting with you, Courtney, can you sort of think about your lowest moment and just, tell us a little bit about that, please?
I was trying to think okay, what would have been my lowest moment? And I can honestly say, because I've dealt with other health issues, I don't necessarily know if myasthenia has caused my lowest moment. But what I will say, a moment that sticks out for me is this happened just a couple, it was in 2018. So what, 3 years ago. I was in Mexico for my birthday. And when I came back, it was very, very cold in Chicago. So for me to go from hot weather to extremely cold weather in May, at a time where Chicago should not have been extremely cold and just rainy and damp, my muscles had a very hard time adjusting to it. So I get home from Mexico, I go to work, that Monday, and I literally could not lift my arms to put my train pass on the little thing to go through the turnstile. And I remember I called my mother. I was like, you have to come get me. I'm like, I cannot get on the train. And I remember asking this woman, I was like, ma'am, I'm having a hard time lifting my arms. Can you help me get into the car? Because my mother pulled up, but it was traffic, so she couldn't jump out and help me.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman was so, I don't know if she thought I had asked her for money or what, but I was like, oh my God, there really is no one here to help me. People are so, the way this world is made up, people are conditioned not to help, where it's all I wanted to do, all I needed her to do was open the car door for me. That was it. But just communicating with her, and my speech wasn't slurred, so I was still able to speak clearly. I just couldn't lift my arms. And I was grateful that I had my mother who could pick me up, because I kept thinking, I was like, my God, if I was all alone, this could have turned out a lot worse than it did. And I actually ended up going to the ER. But just in that moment, not having anyone to really help me, she couldn't understand why I needed the help. And I just, it was a stressful moment. And it just made me realize how incredibly helpless I was in that moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That just kind of goes back to your film and the title of your film, The Beauty Does Lie.
Yeah.
You were young, you looked able-bodied, you could talk. So this woman probably didn't think that there was anything wrong with you.
She probably felt like we were trying to kidnap her or something. Why, I'm not getting close to that car.
Yeah.
Because it's like she tensed up. And I was like, I'm the one that can't move and need help. So it was just a reminder of how helpless you can be at times. Because in Mexico, I had a ball and was doing all kind of activities. I never got weak, but just that change in temperature caused the muscle weakness to just amplify in a way that I was not prepared for.
Right. That's why one thing to know is, to try to figure out where your triggers are. Of course, that's not something you were anticipating, but little things can trigger you. Stress, temperature change, dietary things. So, yes. And I hear what you're saying about lowest moment. As you were speaking, I was thinking about all these other moments that I had been through as well. As having myasthenia gravis, you go through those low points a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Monie, can you tell us about a moment that sort of sticks out for you that was a low moment?
Oh, low moment. It was definitely closer to my initial my diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like many other people with myasthenia gravis, I get that wonderful fatigue component. I remember one day waking up and I guess not being just that aware of the condition in general, not knowing how not to push my body. I woke up in the morning and could pretty much not open my eye. And my body was so fatigued that I could not get out of bed. Yeah, like I just couldn't move. I remember talking to my suite mate. She was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, I'm not okay, but you know, I just must be tired." But that starting the spark to what ended up leading to be, you know, mental health issues. But that's definitely one of the lower moments that I remember.
Wow, yeah, that is tough not being able to move at all. I remember not being able to move my foot and that being a low moment, another low moment. Thanks for sharing that. Floyd, can you tell us about a low moment that you have experienced, during your journey with myasthenia?
And there's so many of them.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. For a long time, I think I dealt with this for a long time before I started having symptoms outside of the double vision and the droopy eyelids. Um, wow, like I said, there's so many of them and so many things that triggered me to come out of remission. But I'd have to say my lowest moment would be what we discussed yesterday with my daughter. She was going to school right down the street, less than a block away. And she wanted me to carry her and I couldn't pick her up, tried to pick her up and could not pick her up. And it just broke my heart that I couldn't pick up my baby girl. And that would have to be, I would say that was my lowest moment. When it really kicked in, you have something wrong with you. This is real. That would be it.
Right. No, I've definitely been thinking about that since you told me. And yeah, my heart goes out to you. I can understand or, think about how you felt in that moment, not being able to pick up your daughter, definitely heartbreaking. So thank you all for sharing, those low moments. People with rare diseases go through these moments, and, a lot of what was just shared, those are things that you may not have shared with a lot of other people, especially when you were going through it. A lot of us do suffer in silence just because other people don't understand. Not understanding that you can't pick up your daughter or you can't open a car door or get out of bed, which are like regular things that people do all the time. So yeah, thanks for sharing that and bringing awareness to some of the things that we go through in myasthenia. So I also wanted to just touch on, Courtney, you mentioned this a little bit in your story about one of your low moments, but can you describe a time, and I'm happy to go backwards, starting with Floyd, but a time when somebody thought that you were like faking it, like they didn't really think that you were sick. So yeah, Floyd, I'm going to start with you and then circle back to Courtney. If you can describe a time where someone didn't think you had myasthenia or he didn't think you, had muscle weakness.
Yeah, again, it's been multiple times. Even now, people think that that maybe I'm just I'm making up excuses. Being lazy. I've even had a doctor say that I was being lazy. And I'm a martial artist. I ride my bike. I work out whenever I can, whenever this allows me to do so. And I was working every day, ran my own business, 24/7. And I couldn't believe this doctor told me that that I was being lazy, that I needed to do more, that I needed to do this and that. I get that a lot now, that people think that there's nothing wrong with me just because of the things that I do or because of the way I look. They think that that I look healthy to them. I'm physically active. They say there's nothing wrong with me. So when someone calls and say, I need a ride, it's very important. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And I can't do it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. They don't believe it.
Wow. What kind of doctor told you that? I'm really surprised that did this doctor know that you had myasthenia gravis and told you you were lazy?
This doctor, he was an intern at the time. And he was just learning about neurological diseases. He constantly had to go to a book or go to his phone and try to look up things about myasthenia gravis. instead of just pulling up my records. And at the time, they were still coming in, when they walk in the office and they have these great big thick files on you, that are about that thick and probably 6 or 7 stacks. They were still carrying those from from exam room to exam room. And he just had no clue what was going on with me. I switched doctors. I ended up going back to Freighter because now I'm at the medical college.
Wow, sounds like that doctor definitely needed to do some more learning through the residency and even the bedside manner. Like, even if you think in your head that a patient is lazy, you don't tell them that.
Yeah, exactly. And at the time, this was some years ago. And I hadn't learned how to control my temper yet. So I think he realized that it was about to come to blows, at that point, and just refused to accept what I was saying. So I moved on. I'm sure he moved on at that point. In fact, I don't know if he ever, I'm hoping he got better.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thanks for sharing that. Monie, can you tell us a little bit about a time when someone, didn't think that you were actually sick or had myasthenia, that you were making things up?
A time? You mean all the time?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing was, at least in the earlier days of having the symptoms, I would literally hide myself when I was having symptoms, so people wouldn't see me unless I wasn't flaring. So like I was known on campus for wearing like my hat's really low so people couldn't see my eyes. I would hide if I had to be out when I was flaring. But like Floyd, I've been active for forever. I'm a dancer. I weight train. People see me doing so much that they don't think that there's this other thing that doesn't allow me to do stuff. And there's not so much now, thankfully, but there was a point, a lot of time that I couldn't do stuff, or because I'm a dancer, if a choreographer knows me to be, come into the process with a certain amount of energy and I'm fatigued or I'm about to have a flare and I'm not as present in rehearsal, they're like, what's going on? Like, go take a nap or something and come back. Okay, but I also wasn't comfortable with telling people what was going on then.
Right.
I'm certain my family didn't quite understand what was going on. And they were like, oh, come help. And I'm like, I can't. And I'm like, oh my God, here she goes again. No one ever helped anybody. Being lazy. They've gotten better now. But yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Even now, people have a hard time thinking that there's something wrong with me.
Just real quick, I want to interrupt. You said something about hats, and that's funny to me because I just started wearing hats, and it's been these type of hats because they fit real tight. And if I pull it down low enough, it would help keep my eyelids raised and help keep my eyes open. So after a while, you learn how to hide it. I used to do, before I got married, I used to sit in a dark room all the time because it was easier to keep my eyes open.
That too. I was known for, I still don't sit with a lot of lights on because it's too much for my eyes. But yeah, the dark is my homie.
Shades.
I hear you on that. And talking about like hiding your eyes, I think I might have shared with at least a couple of you that my eyes, before I had a thymectomy, my eyes were twitching one day in a friend's office. And my heart was beating because I wasn't sharing my story either. I was taking my medicine, and for the most part, I was okay. I mean, I had flares, but I didn't discuss it openly. And my eyes were twitching, and he said, "What's wrong with your eye? Are you okay?" I said, "Oh, there's just something in it." And then a few months later, when I was having a thymectomy, I told him I have this disease called Myasthenia Gravis, and I'm gonna have this surgery. So remember that time when my eye was twitching in your office? He said, "Oh yeah." He said, I thought you were smoking weed." Like I didn't know it was the disease. So definitely tried to, hide those eyes. And Floyd, I like that, with the hat, like having to pull up the eyes.
Yeah.
But yeah, Courtney, can you like tell us about another time when, or times, yeah, where people didn't, think that you were actually sick?
Yeah, well, I've been fortunate in the sense where my friends and family, if they ever thought it, they never spoke it. And they probably didn't do it because they know I'm a very outspoken person. So they probably didn't want to get
Okay.
their feelings hurt. But I
Right.
do remember a time going back to like how your cousin thought that your eye was switching because of weed. So I was with a friend of mine and she was an attorney. And I don't know if it was like some kind of like bar association or something, but there was some kind of like mix and mingle. So we're all drinking. And of course, when you drink and you have myasthenia, your speech gets slurred throughout the evening. So my speech is slurred at the end of the night, and I'm like, okay, you guys, I'm ready to go. Now my friend isn't there; she's still there, but she's not by me. So when I make the announcement that I'm about to leave, people are like, no, she's drunk. Take her keys. Don't let her leave. So, and I'm like, no, I'm not drunk. So then my friend sees me like trying to explain that I'm not drunk. And she's like across the room, like, she's fine. Let her leave. So it was just in that moment where I was like, wow, okay, this slurred speech makes these people think that I'm so just drunk to the point where I can't drive, where that wasn't the case. I think I had maybe like 2 drinks in the span of like 3 or 4 hours that we were there. So I was perfectly fine to drive, but it was just that my speech was slurred. Like the Mestinon, at that point, I was on Mestinon and prednisone, and they both just weren't working anymore. But at that point, my vision wasn't impaired, my limbs weren't impaired, it was just my speech was impaired. So it's still a moment that we laugh about because I was not drunk, I was perfectly fine to drive, but because my speech was slurred, everyone's like, she's drunk. So that was like the only time where someone mistook the symptoms as something else. But again, like I said, I've been very fortunate where if people thought that I was being lazy or thought that something else was going on, they never told me.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that is kind of a funny story now, but I'm sure it wasn't too funny in the moment.
You know what? I did laugh in the moment. I
Okay.
have found that laughing has gotten me through myasthenia. Like it's gotten me, having a sense of humor has been phenomenal. And we laughed. I was just like, there's nothing I can do in this moment, but have my friend explain what's going on. And eventually I was allowed to leave and drive
Okay.
home. Yes.
Got it. That actually transitions well into my next question. I was going to ask what has really helped you to get through some of the tough times. And you're mentioning laughter. I don't know if there's anything else that's, helped you to kind of get through the tough times of dealing with myasthenia.
Laughter, and then just realizing that this is just a moment. Like I discussed in my TED talk, I mean, it hasn't happened in a while only because I haven't been working. So I'm not involved in the hustle and bustle of life as far as like, getting up super early, taking public transportation downtown to go to work. But when I was doing that, I mean, some mornings my hands would be so weak that I couldn't button my shirt. So my mother would have to button my shirt for me. But then, I would get to work and be perfectly fine and be able to lift stuff or move stuff or do whatever I had to do to get through the day. So just putting things in perspective and knowing that this is only a moment that I am going to get through. That has been very helpful. And then honoring myself in that moment. If I can't talk, then I'm just not going to talk. Or if I'm tired, then If I have something planned where it can be, rescheduled, then I'm going to reschedule it. I'm going to respect where my body is at in that moment.
Awesome. Those are definitely good tips, like putting it in that perspective, that it is, only a moment. The flare won't last that long. Of course, it could be more, more than a moment, but it's not going to last forever. And yeah, honoring where you are, not trying to push it. I think that's a great perspective. Monie, can you share what has really kind of gotten you through the tough times of dealing with myasthenia?
Much like Courtney, I had to start realizing that every flare comes to an end. It's not like this one whole, it doesn't encompass my whole experience of life. And then when I'm not flaring, almost like doing the most to enjoy all of the moments that I can, because I'm like, I don't know when the next flare is coming, sometimes they sneak up on you. For the most part, I know when they're coming. There's been some times when they just like, hey, and I'm here. So making sure that I enjoy the moments that I can, and just being kinder to myself. Sleep is my homie. And really, really honoring that it's just a different body that I live with now.
Right. No, that's key. That's something I talk about a lot too, that you should enjoy the moments when you aren't flaring. And you have that positive outlook, you are going to enjoy those times and to me, it can also help you to get through those low moments because, like you said, every flare comes to an end. And when you're done with that, when that flare is over, then you can do a lot of the things you want to do. You can enjoy life. Floyd, can you share what sort of helps you to get through those low moments, like what you've sort of relied on?
Right now, I would have to say it's my son. In fact, I was just trying to find a picture to see if I can load into the virtual background because he is funny. After, like I said, the last flare up I had was last year, started in March, during the pandemic. And I'm walking around, trying to hold one eyelid open so I could, see fully. And he's mocking me. He's walking around imitating me with one eye open, one eye closed, and he got to the point to where he's able to close that one eye just enough to keep it open, but the other one is wide open. And he said, "This is how daddy looked." And I'm like, okay. And to him, it was just funny. And it just brought me up, made me laugh, and it made me realize it's not going to last, because it had been a couple of years since I had a big flare up. And it made me realize it's going to pass. And it reminded me of Bible verses, "This too shall pass." So I kind of clung to that. No,
awesome.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, no, and I was gonna say, then there was another time I have a cousin, because we used to always go party somewhere. And and this was before I got married, and I was embarrassed about going somewhere with that one eye open and one eye closed. So he said, "Here, take this," and gave me this little box, and it looked like a jewelry box, like it might have had a ring or a bracelet or a watch or something in it. It was an eye patch. He told me to wear this. He said, "Wear this. It'll make you look mysterious." And I was like, "Okay, fine." And it made me laugh. That was fun. So.
And then it will help you see too.
Yeah, but I found out for me that with both eyes functioning like they're supposed to, but the only problem is I can't keep the eyelid open. It messed up my depth perception, and it made me dizzy. So it wasn't, it took me a while to get used to it.
Yeah, and then you start like sort of crying too, like your eye starts tearing up as well.
Right.
Yeah. Got it. So let's note that Floyd's son is 5, right?
Right.
So he was 4 back then.
He'll be 6 in May.
Okay. But yeah, I'm sure that definitely, gives you that joy and keeps you going. And like you said, he's funny and makes you laugh. I think this is great that we're all, here talking. This is, community. And how have you all found community during your journey? Because I think that's really, really important. For me, I didn't have any community. I was in law school in upstate New York and never heard of Myasthenia Gravis, which I'm sure you hadn't either. There was the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation of America, but like they didn't have a chapter where I was, and this was before Facebook and everything. So I didn't find community until I actually went into remission. So how were you able to find, or were you able to find community while you were really, going through low moments, or have you found, community now? And Courtney, I know done some work with your film, but can you talk just more about like how you found community? Courtney, starting with you, Courtney.
I don't know that I found community. I just made sure that the relationships that I had, like with my friends, were like these were solid people who genuinely cared about my well-being. And my next post on Instagram is going to speak to that. Like, I just have throughout the years just made sure that my tribe had my back, even if they like, a really good friend of mine, there'll be times when I'll be talking about my health and she'll be like, girl, I forgot that you were sick. Like, because she sees me doing all this stuff. And I remember she told me, she said, girl, I already know. She was like, if I get cancer, if I get anything, I am contacting you because I want to know how you get through. She was like, you make it seem so effortless. But a part of that is having like just that really good support system that I can be transparent with. And I think that that's really important, that I'm able to, although they see me and they're like, oh, we get a little confused sometimes because you do look healthy, they do understand that I am dealing with this and it can, put a wrench in things at times. And just making sure that I'm surrounded by like really good energy and not placing limits on myself. Like, I love how Monie is just very active. She's still, dancing, still just doing like the weight training. And I think that's really important because for me, like back in the day, when I was like thinking about getting involved in different groups, it was and it still is very difficult for me to listen to people say what they will never be able to do again because they have myasthenia. And I'm like, you cannot put those limitations on yourself. So I tend to stay away from groups like that because it's very important that I'm mindful of the information and the energy that I'm taking in. And I don't want to put those limitations on myself. Just because I may not be able to get out of bed today doesn't mean that, like in September I was paddleboarding and that's hard as hell. Like I was using muscles where I was like, oh God, like, and I didn't fall. I was like, I got this. So yeah, it ebbs and flows and I want to be able to ebb and flow. I don't want to hear that I just can't get up and this is how life is going to be. Hell no, I got a list. I got a bucket list that I want to complete. So it's just really, for me, it's having that support system that energetically speaks to where I want to be in life.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's key. Just having that right mindset. You're right. And not surrounding yourselves with those people. My family was definitely really, really helpful and supportive. I just hadn't met anybody else with myasthenia who was going through anything similar to, what I was going through. Monie, can you just talk a little bit about community and how you've, found support?
In the beginning, no, but literally in the beginning. So between like 2004 and I want to say maybe 2010, I didn't have community because I didn't want it. Like I said, I hid from people. I wouldn't talk about what I was going through. I barely told anyone that I had this diagnosis. I didn't, and I just felt like people wouldn't understand. I pushed people away. I think if I had approached it differently, I would have had the community because I do got, people who would support me and support me now who have been around the whole time. But In 2010, I think I is that when I started going to the New York chapter of like the MGFA. They had a New York chapter here. And so I started going to those meetings. I think Instagram was around at that time, and there was a muscle movement. I can't remember their organization, but found them. They are connected to other Black people who had myasthenia gravis, because every time I went online, I only saw white people, and I was like, so am I like the sprinkle?
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? And I found community on Instagram. That's how I connected with Courtney. I connected with other people who I connected with, who I've lost people because of that community. People that I connected with on social media, because I felt alone in the myasthenia gravis world. Not necessarily alone in that I didn't have general support, but I was like,
yeah.
When I talk about this stuff, who gonna know what I'm talking about? When I'm like, oh my God, my eyelids not staying open today. It's been a long day. People like, they go take a nap.
Yeah, right.
Y'all telling me to take a nap one more time, we gonna fight. I took a nap.
Right.
It's still not open.
Right.
But yeah, finding people where I can have those conversations and then being really candid, and us being able to laugh at the communal symptoms, or the support between other people that have myasthenia gravis. That was really important, and I didn't find that until maybe like 2010 because of social media. Yep.
Got it. Yeah, actually, that's how I connected with Courtney as well, on Twitter. And I was grateful to like find her. I was like, oh, another young Black woman who has myasthenia, got diagnosed in her 20s. So we got connected. And just a fun fact, then we had like good friends in common. She had babysat like a good friend of mine's kids. I was like, how small is the world, But Floyd, can you just talk about community a little bit, and then we'll just do one more question before we end.
They're here in Milwaukee. Nada, I didn't talk. There was no community. I stopped going to the support group meetings because they were sad, broke down support group meetings. 4 or 5 people. If they had something going on where it was the pancake breakfast or something where they were serving food, then people would show up. But it was always older white people that talked about when they were diagnosed, they had the surgery done to remove a part of their eyelid so they can keep their eyes open and things like that. So I mean, we're talking about people that probably now are deceased. That's how old they are. When I stopped going to the support group meetings, my best friend through all of this before he passed was my father. He took me, when I couldn't drive, he'd take me everywhere I needed to go. Even if I tried doing it on my own, he'd stop me and cut me off and do it for me. In fact, I was just reminded, the doctor that was talking about me being lazy was when my father took me to go get sign up for Social Security, SSI. They had me go and see one of their doctors, and it was one of their doctors that actually said that to me.
Wow.
So yeah, but my family, they're supportive. At one point, a few times in the beginning when I started doing the walks and fundraisers, I couldn't get them to participate. But things are different now. It has kind of sunk into them, that this is real. So. But before, like I said, before my father passed, that was my support right there, my backbone. If he caught me doing this, trying to keep my eyelids open, put your hand down. Stop trying to hold your eye up, because I would get sores. My eyelids would get sores on them.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your dad's passing, but really happy that he was there as a support for you, through those low moments. So yeah, I think this has been great. Thank you guys all for really shedding light on myasthenia and talking about what it's like to live with myasthenia, live with, a rare disease. Before we end, I just want to ask you what advice you have for people who are watching, who have a family member with a rare disease. It might not be myasthenia, but something that's rare that people don't know a lot about. and has some of the similar traits as myasthenia in that there's not a lot of research, et cetera. Starting with you, Monie, because I know you have to go soon. If you could give us some last words for someone who's watching.
For those who may have a friend or family member with a rare disease, just listen to what they say. I know that, you may want to offer the solutions, but just support them in the process. They can become overwhelmed with people like, why don't you do this? Why don't you try that? Why don't you do this? Have you tried this? That can be overwhelming for somebody experiencing something new that they've never experienced before. And try not to do like the comparative Olympics. Like, oh yeah, I remember the time I was really tired too. Oh yeah, sometimes, oh girl, yeah. When I overwork sometimes I can't lift my arm either.
It's not the same.
Not the same.
Not the same at all.
It's not the same. So really just know that this experience is something that they are learning to navigate, and ask them how they want to be supported without pushing your support on them, because that's probably the best route.
Yeah, no, I like that. Asking them how they should be supported and listening is key. And the comparative Olympic, like you hit the nail on the head there. Floyd, do you have any advice for others who have, family members with a rare disease or friends?
Yeah, everything that she just said, I would agree with. And watch them, keep your eyes on them, because they, like I said, I got very good at hiding, the things that that I was dealing with, and sometimes being too embarrassed to admit that I couldn't do something, like driving. I've been pulled over by the police because, they thought I was drunk because I'm driving with one eye open, or having double vision. You got that line in the street coming at you, so I've learned how to drive and hide that. So watch the people that are going through something, and learn what it is that learn about what they're dealing with. Because I would also give people websites, look it up, read about it, tell them, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, read it.
Right, no, that's good advice. I've definitely done that as well. Courtney, do you have any other advice for someone who has a family member or friend with a rare disease?
Just basically Monie and Floyd summed it up. Like, just I would say keep your opinions to yourself.
I like that.
Definitely be a listener and understand that it is not about you. It is completely about that person. And, someone might say, oh, well, that's really selfish and da da da. Look, this person is dealing with something that, unless you actually have been diagnosed, you will never understand, ever understand, come remotely close to understanding what it feels like to be in that position. So I would just tell that person to have compassion. And again, keep their opinions to themselves, like no negative Nancy's, and do the research to learn more about that particular illness.
Awesome, great advice. All of you had great advice that I agree with. Yeah, definitely do research, listen, have compassion. Yeah, keep your opinions to yourself. Don't tell people they're lazy. But yeah, thank you all so much for being on this this program with me today. Thank you, Courtney, Floyd, Monie. Thank you for watching on Rare Disease Day. And I hope we wanted to just bring some awareness to rare diseases, myasthenia gravis in particular. And I hope that you will really just listen to all the tips that Courtney, Floyd, and Monie just gave you about how you can support someone else with a rare disease. Thanks again.